Okay guys, let's just talk really briefly about box office predictions for the weekend of March 24th to March 26th of 2017. Obviously, we have some really big news to talk about in terms of this. Now, obviously, Beauty and the Beast is going to basically be owning the box office this weekend. There's nothing opening, there's nothing kind of even remotely close in order to kind of take it off its throne. With its opening weekend of $174 million last weekend, it's going to be really interesting to see how far it actually falls. In terms of non-summer, non-holiday box office sophomore frames, we have the record being American Sniper, $64 million in its second weekend. Now, it seems like Beauty and the Beast is going to be able to top that record, but we just don't really know exactly by how much. Anyway, going into that, I'm not necessarily sure exactly how much it's going to make. In terms of actually falling, I would imagine that it's going to fall anywhere between like 50 and 60%. I think a really safe bet at this point is going to be somewhere around 80 million, which would probably bring it to about a little over 300 million domestically. Interestingly enough, if it does a little bit better, some reports are basically saying that that movie can probably make 500 million domestically. And not like what I said in one of my last videos about this movie is particularly how much better these movies do internationally than domestically. Not necessarily making any promises here, but if it can make somewhere around the lines of $500 million domestically, then we can imagine it being made over, definitely kind of getting over $1 billion worldwide, but maybe somewhere around 1.3 to 1.5 or $5 billion worldwide. I'm not necessarily saying that's going to happen. It's just going to be really interesting to see where this movie kind of ends up. Now, because Beauty and the Beast is being so, I guess, strong in terms of like just its own particular film, not to mention how incredibly strong this entire freaking month has been. I've covered this before. Honestly, we've had Logan kind of overperform. Interestingly enough, we even had Kong Skull Island overperform, as much as I felt like that was going to be a dud going into this month in general. Get Out has continued to hold on incredibly strong for not only its genre, but also the time of year. So interestingly enough, it's going to be interesting to see where Power Rangers and Life can actually, I guess, kind of fall in on this weekend and probably take a piece of the pie in terms of people who want to go see movies and everything else. So honestly, with such a packed month as it is, we have some big movies still left to open up, big movies to talk about in terms of box office. Now, personally, and that's not even to mention Chips. Chips is also opening this weekend, but I'm not talking about it here. I'm not interested in it, and I'm only talking about things I'm interested in. So in terms of Power Rangers, obviously, if you've been living under a rock, you probably have not seen anything about this movie, but it has been actually being pushed and promoted really very hard amongst, I guess, Lionsgate and, just social media in general. It's had pretty good success in terms of where it should be and how much money it can supposedly make based on just not only interest alone, but just kind of general knowledge from the general public. Just kind of knowledge of the general public that this movie is actually coming out, plus the whole nostalgia factor that kind of played really heavily last week with Beauty and the Beast, and not only that, but with Logan and maybe even Kong. It's, think about entertainment, guys. Entertainment is built and run on nostalgia these days. So you might not like that. You might like that. I mean, who knows? That's exactly the world we're living in. So that's just basically the movies and content that we're going to be getting. In terms of its social media presence, though, Power Rangers is actually doing pretty well. It's kind of running similar. Boxoffice.com is saying, just looking at their data right here, it's kind of running a little bit similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, which, if you remember, kind of underperformed when it came out, but at the same time, it did relatively well for, I guess, its genre, especially this, 90s throwback kids show redone type of genre that it is. And while that movie didn't necessarily perform in the way that it wanted to, the amount that it actually got, if it could actually get somewhere around 80 million, not opening weekend, obviously, but 80 million in total, as long as it does better internationally, I'm sure Lionsgate's going to be happy with Power Rangers. That being said, I think it's actually going to perform a little bit better. One of the things they point out is that women in particular are actually gravitating towards Power Rangers as well, which is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in terms of Beauty and the Beast, which we all know kind of, I guess, dominated the whole like four corners, not only the four corners, but basically, the two corners that make up the women, older and younger women for what it's worth. So it's going to be cool seeing how women play in the factor of Power Rangers' success going into this movie, considering Beauty and the Beast. But at the same time, I really feel like in terms of last weekend, you're probably going to have a lot of men who I guess are wanting to kind of get away from the success and everyone talking about Beauty and the Beast, maybe wanting to go see Power Rangers. But at the same time, like I said, it's been such a busy, heavy month, especially for male-oriented content with Logan, Get Out, and Kong, then maybe that's not going to be as big of an issue as it was if Beauty and the Beast was the only big movie to open up this month. So if anything, Power Rangers is actually being kind of hurt here when it comes to potential and everything else. So with that being said, I would kind of put it at, look, I'm going to be a little less, I guess, bullish than everyone else when it comes to how much money this movie is going to make. A lot of people are guessing anywhere between 30 and 40. A lot of people are guessing maybe high 30s. I'm going to say $34 million this weekend alone. Not really ready to say how much I think it's going to make in general. We're just going to have to wait to see not only how it does, but its multiplier at the end of the weekend, and also how it does the next weekend. So getting out of that, we have one big opening left to talk about, and that's Life, Sony's Life, a hard R movie, space, I guess kind of akin to Alien and maybe even The Thing, kind of very claustrophobic R-rated film with Ryan Reynolds basically fresh off Deadpool. He's really big right now. Jake Gyllenhaal is always kind of a fan favorite. And then you got Rebecca Ferguson, also straight off of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. So you're not necessarily sure how this movie's going to do. I'm not sure why they decided to open it here, especially amongst all the ridiculous competition. And maybe they weren't expecting Logan to do as well. With Logan being a very hard R, violent-centric type of film, it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of cuts into Life's situation in terms of the box office numbers. Honestly, the movie's reviews have been sort of good. I've heard some bad things. I've heard some really good things. So we're just going to have to say, mostly I've heard blah. It's meh. So I'm just going to have to wait and see. I really want to see it. I really want to see Power Rangers. I don't necessarily think Life is going to be making waves, especially for what it's been kind of this month has been, and considering the competition that it's kind of standing up against this particular weekend. With that being said, I would probably say anywhere, but I would say 13 million this weekend, and then I'm not necessarily sure, maybe kind of making 40 million by the time it's actually out of theaters, and that should probably be enough, especially if it does okay overseas, to make Sony a little happy. I'm not necessarily sure how much this movie actually cost to make in terms of just talking right now. So honestly, guys, those are my predictions for this upcoming weekend. Tell me what you think about this in the comment section below. Are you excited for any of these movies? What do you want to say? What do you want to expect about any of this stuff? And I'm going to catch you on the next Real Numbers video. Bye.